All right, so about a week ago then, we started on the database portion of the class. Okay, last Friday we really got into it, and this week, Monday, we finished up with the PHP MyAdmin and the MySQL stuff that we were doing, those queries. We started to get into SQL Server and SQL Management Studio. Hopefully you remember we went in and we downloaded them both, talked about how to go and create a database. We actually recreated the sales order database using SQL Server, and um, we went over the Chapter 17 written test. Tuesday, we went over the Chapter 15 hands-on test, and as it says, we wrote a couple very simple apps. And really, we did this more, the stuff that was here, we did it more here. So really yesterday, if you remember, we kind of did this twice. So we did it the harder way, where we had to basically build the GUI ourselves, and we had to go in there and create the labels and create the text boxes, etc., which we did. And then we went in and we did it again, and we did it a more automated way by using the data source wizard. All right. The idea today is, and you've got it right in front of you. I wish I had passed this out to you yesterday. For whatever reason, I forgot to. But I'm going to give you about 10 minutes in just a second to build this. It's pretty simple. So build a new um, application. Call it whatever you want. I called mine SQL Query Tester because that's what it's going to be. Look on the screen, please. So this is the whole thing. What you see in purple is the form. This right here is a data grid view. All right, and you can find it under all Windows controls, and you can find it under database controls. This is just a simple text box right here. Make it multi-line, in case you want it to be multi-line. 3 buttons, btn execute, btn clear, and btn exit. A label here that says records returned, and another label right here that will actually have the number of records returned. These are the names that I gave to the controls. I've also given you the code. So we're going to go over the code in just a couple minutes. All right, but like I said, I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to build this interface. So it's 8:13 right now. Let's say at 8:20, we'll start actually putting in the code ourselves and taking a look at what's in there. All right, so I'm going to pause this so you can get going. All right, then I just want you to know that I did start up SQL Server Management Studio, and there's a lot of information that's in here if you haven't already realized or recognized that. Let me close that. I guess I've got my mail open. Let me close that so we won't hear the dinging. All right. But if you right mouse click on the database itself and you go to properties, there's a lot of information that's in there that you can see as I move this, kind of space it out a little bit. For instance, there's the name of the server, there's the connection. I can click on view connection properties and get even more information. All right, so like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's in here. So if you can't figure out how to do something, that's at least a good starting place. All right. Okay. So what I did was I scraped all the code off of here, went back. Here's the design. Hopefully you've had enough chance to build that. I do want you to understand this is literally a data grid view. So the idea is when we run this and we put a query in here and we click execute, the result should appear right here. And I think I showed you this yesterday. It'll pretty much look like a spreadsheet, all right, as far as what's in there. So coming in then and putting in the code, first thing I'm going to do a little, not ass backwards, but you'll hopefully understand in just a minute. So up at the top here, I'm creating my database variables. So I've got my SQL connection, which again, I'm just going to call con. You can, again, call that anything you want. Our SQL command. And this is pretty simple, so I'm just going to call this query command. Now, I'm not giving it a name like we've done before because the idea is we can query any of those 8 tables. And I didn't want to give it a specific name like we did yesterday because yesterday we were only working, at that time, we were only working with a customers table. So everything was prefaced with customers. there's really no reason to do that here. So make the data adapter. And again, just going to call that query adapter. And then finally the data table object, which I just call table. Again, I think it makes sense. I don't want to keep harping on the same stuff, but these are very generic names on purpose. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do, and again, you've got the code in front of you, but if you look on the last page or the second page here, I'm going to go into the load event. All right. We don't have to do it in any specific order, but I'm going to go down to the bottom here where we've got the load event. Why? Because I want to create my connection string, then make my connection and open it. You saw this yesterday, so this is var con string, and again, any name you want to use here is totally fine. So var con string equals, now I've said this to you before, I just want to show you this both ways because I'm trying to be complete here. And you might say, well, yesterday you told us you're not going to show us a whole bunch of ways. What I'm about to show you are two ways of doing the same thing. You'll see both in actual application code. So I'm going to put this in and I'm going to get an error. Don't worry about it. I want to show you two ways to fix it. So I'm going to put in here, again, connection string equals, and then double quotes, server equals, and then the name of my server, which is, you already saw that. I could just go grab it, but I'm going to put it in myself. Desktop-M1J4BEF. I don't know if there's any significance to this name. To my knowledge, there's not. All right, so there's that stuff. Then I want database equals, and we call that sales orders. And our integrated, again, it's going to word wrap, security equals SSPI. And again, this, I'm getting an error right now because it doesn't understand the single backslash. Did you hear that? It doesn't get what that is. That's what the error is. Two ways to fix it. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is sometimes you might have a long path. This is not a very long path, but sometimes it might be. You can either, at the beginning, before your double quote, you can put in an @ sign, and that fixes it. Or every time you've got a backslash, you can preface it, or after it, put another backslash. Either one of those will work, and you'll see it done both ways. I don't like doing all that work, and again, with a long path especially, so I just put in the @ sign. To me, that's much easier to do it like that. You may agree, you may not agree. Either way, it's totally fine. But again, make sure for this, you put in your server name right there. All right, so replace what I've got there in the blue with your own server name. Everything else should be the same. I'm expecting that you used my naming conventions in here. All right, so, I could put a message in here, but it's pretty obvious. Create connection string, variable. All right, we could put that in. I guess it's a little overkill, but that's fine. And then I've got here basically create SQL connection based on connection string or con string, whatever we just called it right there. So again, that's just con equals new SQL connection, and we're passing it in the con string. And then we will open the connection. So con.open. Now, all we've done is we've established the communication that's going to take place between the database, which is an SQL server object, and our C# program. We haven't done anything else right now. So we've added a little bit of code that was right here, and that's it. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right. I'm working on my own project And it's interesting because I don't want to get into it with you because if it doesn't work, you'll never see it. But what I'm trying to do, I only found one video online that was even remotely similar to what I want to do. The guy who's doing it, English is his second language. So it's very interesting trying to listen to him. His code looks okay, but his explanation is a little hard to fathom. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into here again. And after our database variables, I've got here, this code runs when the execute button is clicked. Well, before we even do that, let's just put in our clear code. You didn't have to do it this way, but I put in a clear all. All right, and in my clear all routine, that's what happens when the clear button is clicked. Remember, we have 3 buttons. We've got the one button that's our exit button, which I just put in our stock code right here. I didn't even call another routine. We've got our clear button, which is going to call clear all, which simply is just going to clear a couple things. Now, you'll notice that I put in here, this dot DGV query tester dot data source equals null. And then the next line says, oops, come on, this dot dvg query tester dot rows dot clear. And how did I learn to do that? I Googled it because I could not remember what we want to do right here is we want to clear the data grid view. That was the idea. So I literally typed into Google how to clear a data grid view C#. All right. And they came up with several ways of doing it. I tried a couple which didn't work. And then I tried this one. Now I forgot to put down, usually I like to give you the source, so I put the URL down. I didn't. I'm sorry about that. So that was the first thing. Then the rest of it pretty much is what you're used to. txt query dot text equals double quote to clear that. Our LBL num records dot text equals 0. I just wanted to make sure that when you start, before you do a new query, it's going to have a 0 in there, meaning that basically we haven't done a query yet. Okay? And then finally, txt query dot focus. Now, I'm not even asking, I guess more than anything, I'm telling, all that stuff that's in there should make sense to everybody by now. All right, there's nothing big in there. And I can test this now, although there's not going to be a lot I can do, but I can come in here and run it. It should run okay. Well, it's telling me my con.open, login failed for user. Okay, well, we'll have to look at that in just a second. I don't know what the problem is. All right, but the idea is what should have happened in there is when I click the clear button, it should clear the grid view, which doesn't have anything in it anyway, but I can put something into the text box and it should clear out whatever is in there. All right, let's just go and run the code or put the code in for the execute routine. And you'll notice I did everything here in line. Would this have been better to break this up into modules? Possibly. This was supposed to be, believe it or not, a fairly simple example. All right. So, as it says, this code runs when the execute button is clicked. Now, you'll notice that the first thing I'm doing here is I'm setting query command equal to null. And that's going to make sure that every time I click execute, okay, I'm going to clear out whatever was my old query command. Does that make sense? So if I had just done a query, I don't want to run that one again. I want to run a new one. All right. So I've got here query adapter equals new SQL data adapter. And my table equals new data table. Oops. And again, maybe I'm wrong here with what I'm about to say, but I'm assuming that stuff makes sense. We did go over it the other day. All right. So what we want to do next could fail. In fact, I want to make it fail in just a couple minutes. I'm purposely going to take this after we put in the code on the bottom of the first page. So I'm talking about lines 27 through about 42 right now. So about 15 lines of code. Then we're done. We're done with the program. But I want to make this fail, and then I want to show you what's good about the program and start talking about some of the ways that the program could be improved. Does that make sense? All right, so we put a try-catch block in here. All right. So anytime we have a try, we'll have a catch, and we're just going to put exception in here. We'll call it EX. You can call it just about anything you want. So we're going to try to run the query in here, for lack of better words. So query command equals new SQL command, txt query, whoops, come on, query dot text with our connection. Again, I don't like to take things for granted. Does everybody realize what we're doing there is we're telling it to fill up the command object with whatever we put into the text box? Is there anybody that doesn't make sense to? All right. So this line right here is saying that what we are about to run is whatever we put in here. All right. So that's first thing. How could that fail? Well, we could leave it blank. We could put in something that wasn't a query. We could spell the word select wrong. You understand? These are all sorts of things that we could put in we could misspell a table name or a field name. You know, there's a plethora, as they say, of things that could potentially go wrong here. All right. So now I want to say query adapter dot, and notice again what's in here. The one that comes up first is select command. All right. But there are other ones. There's a delete command. All right. There is an insert command. And there is an update command. We are going to get into those more next week. In other words, the only thing we're doing from CRUD right now is the R for read. All right. Or a select statement. That's it. Next week, we're going to talk about the other major things that are in here and take a look at those. But what we are interested in then is the select command. All right, so that's going to be equal to our query command. And remember, the reason that we're doing that is so that in the next line we can now say this. We can say query adapter dot fill, fill into our table. So we've set up the adapter, we've set up that communicative mechanism, and now then we put the stuff basically from the text box into our adapter. Now we're saying dump the stuff that's in the adapter and dump it into our data table object. All right. Then it simply becomes, DVG, not that, try that again. Query tester dot data source You're all right. All right, dgv.query.dataSource equals table. And then we also want to fill in the number of records that were returned. And that's table.rows.count, and we'll put a toString on there. All right. Now we're not done yet because we haven't written any code for the exception. But again, I want to make sure you all understand this is what we're trying to do here. All right. And to catch the exception, and the code is on the back of this first page. this is one place where the program could be improved. And what I mean is, I'm just doing a standard exception check, but there's different kinds of exceptions that can occur. All right. So in here, as you can see on your pages, it's just a message box dot show. And I just said SQL error because it's some kind of an SQL error. And then I'm going to put in here /R/N. I don't even know if I did that there, but I'm doing it here. And then I'm going to say plus ex.message. So I'll let the system message show. And then I put in here error in SQL. You can put in anything you want. That's just the title. Then message box buttons dot just okay, because there's not really anything they can do. And since it's an error, message box icon dot error. And that's it. All right. So I'm going to save it, try to run it. Now it's still giving me an error in here. Let's talk about that. All right. So what is it saying? It says click to open the exception handler. It says login failed for user dot. All right. What could that mean? Well, it could mean quite a few things. It could mean that my connection string in here was bad. All right, so I'm going to look. In fact, I don't even know if I still have that. I had saved, there it is. It's possible I copied it in incorrectly. Anything is possible with me. Database of sales orders. Oh, I've got, look at that. See that? I don't know how I put that there, but I did instead of putting in a semicolon. That could be very well what the problem was. I don't know. But I'm going to save it, make that change, save it, and run it again. Well, that looks better. Now, notice if you would, if I click execute, it says SQL error. And then it says execute reader. Command property has not been initialized. Does that make sense? We put nothing in here, so that initialization that we did into our SQL command object never took place. All right. If I run it again, and I'm gonna type in the word, I'm just gonna say select star from customers. Well, but I'm gonna put the T, leave the T off of the word select. That's not a valid word. So I'm gonna click execute. And now notice I get again, incorrect syntax near the star. It's trying to help me. All right. So I come back in and I know my table is customers, but I'm purposely going to leave the S off of customers. I'm purposely doing that. And I'm clicking execute. Now I get invalid object name customer. So you see, the reason I'm showing you this is in a few minutes, what we're going to do when we finish with this exercise is we're going to go over parts 2 and 3 of chapter 18. Part 3 of chapter 18 talks about the different types of errors that you can get when you do this stuff. It's not all inclusive, but it's a pretty good, they do a pretty good job in here. Now, one thing, so let's just make it correct. So I'm going to come in here and say select star from customers. I'm going to click execute. There's my stuff, and it says I got 27 records. Well, that's good. So I can go in here if I want to and to just take a look at my stuff. This is just set up for selects. This is not set up so that you are able to go in there and do inserts, updates, and deletes. All right. But I can check on any of my tables. So I can come in here and I can do the vendors table, for example. And you notice I've got 10 vendors. There they are. I can come in and do my orders table and I can execute. And it says, oh, because I put order instead of orders. 937 records. Guess what? They're all in here. You get the idea, right? I should even be able to do, for example, I don't know, this is not going to, I'm doing it off the top of my head, but it should still work. So I'm going to say select customer first name, customer last name, employee first name, employee last name, from customers, I'll call it C, employees E, where customers dot, and I don't remember what field, it's either the employee ID or it's the customer ID, but I'm going to think it's the customer ID. So customer ID equals, in fact, that should be a C, where C dot customer ID equals E dot customer ID. And click execute, and it says invalid column name. Okay, well, what do I do then? Well, then I got to go back to here and take a look. What I'm trying to get across to you is I can do joins if I want to. I can make these queries as difficult or as easy as I want to or need to make them be. All right. So as an example, and I do want to show you one, so I'm going to clear this. And let's see. I'm going to stop the run for now. And I'm going to go and take a look in here. And I want to look at my products table. So I'm going to come in here, and I can do this in two ways. I can look at the design, or I can select the top 1,000 rows. That's what I'm going to select. And there they are. And you'll notice there's a product price. Everybody see that? So I just wanted to show you this because we haven't done a lot with queries in here. But, so I'm going to run this again. And as an example, I can say select AVG product price, I think that's the right name, from products. All right, and I can click execute. And it shows me what that is. There's only one record returned, but the average price is $195.93. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to try something here. Where? And I might have the wrong syntax, but we'll see. Of course I do. What I was trying to show you, and I'm not doing a good job of it, is you can do what is called a nested query. So the idea is this should give me 193.93, and this, oh, okay, I know what the problem is. Okay, where product price is greater than, see if it takes that. And it did. I've got 4 products that are more than $193.33. What I want to get across to you, though, is you start to see where you can get some stuff in here. I could have written this as 2 queries. But what I said was, grab me the average product price. And then use that as the input, use that output from that as the input into this. So in other words, if you look at just what's in blue there, what it's basically saying in this query is give me a count of all the products where the product price is greater than $193.33. All right. And in fact, if rather than count, if I say select star from products where the product price is greater than 193.33, and I think that's the right number, and I execute it, there's my 4. So it could be done as 2 queries. I just very simplistically did it as 1 query. All right. One of the things I've been thinking about this, I've started to do a little bit of work on it, and what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do next week, starting next week, is to actually build this as a project. And I've decided we're only going to worry about 3 three of the tables in here. Those will be the categories table, because it's real simple, and that's a good one to start with, the customers table, and the products table. But it would be nice if we could set this up where we could add a new product, delete an existing product, etc. What I want you to understand about what I just said, so if I do this, I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to select star from categories. Again, this is the simplest table, right? That's it. What I want to make sure that you understand is, so if we set up 3 forms, actually 4 forms, maybe we'll have like a form, a beginning form. And from there you can jump either to the categories, or you can jump to the products, or you could jump to the customers. Does that make sense? All right. But I should not be able to remove a category from the database while there are products of that category. Does that, what I just said, make sense? All right. So if I've got some products in here, so here's my 6 categories. All right. I'm going to clear this again, and I'm going to select star from products. And I'm going to execute it. And you'll notice this category ID, all of these should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So if I go back to my categories page and I try to delete category 5, but this record that's right, well, of course I picked it there, right there with category 5 still exists, I'm going to get an error message. All right, because the parent table is categories. The child table is products. There is a one-to-many relationship between products, all right, or between categories and products. In other words, each category can have 0 or more products underneath it. But since the table that's in charge, so to speak, is the categories table, I cannot remove a category while that category has products of that category number. All right, and you'll see that next week. But that's the kind of thing that, as you know, as a somebody who's creating these kind of applications, you've got to think about. All right. Not only that, I mean, look at this. You've already seen this. I made a mistake in here, but not on purpose. Remember this when I put this here? So I had that there, not on purpose. But it actually shows a good point, and that is this, that when I run the program, I get an error. Well, right now, this program is not handling that error. All right. But what I could have done, should have done, is in the load event here, feel free to put this in if you want to, is to put in here try. And I'm going to remove that. I'll put it in just a bit. But I'm going to move all this stuff here. I'm going to tab it over. Okay, and here I'm going to put in catch. And again, I'll just catch exception, EX. And I will put in here the old message box dot show. And I'll put in, again, some kind of SQL error. But I think it's important that when you do that, you always put something like plus ex.message. You know, I could have put in here error and query string or whatever. It doesn't really, that's not what's really important. All right, and then I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to replicate. Oops, don't want that. I'm going to replicate in here just my SQL error. All right, and again, you know, message box buttons dot OK, and my message box icon dot error, because it's some kind of an error. All right, so there's that, and it gives me this because my program's still running. You're not really supposed to put in new code while it's running. But now when I do this, notice I get this SQL error, failed for user. And it's trying to show me that I had an error. But the point is, that's not good because I'm not connected. All right. So if I come in here and type in select star from customers and I fail it to execute, I get the same error I got before. All right. So really, I'm handling it, but to be honest with you, I'm handling it in a half-assed manner because I should make sure this never comes back up. All right. So how could I handle something like that? I'm asking you that question. How could I handle something like that? And I want to show you. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a Boolean variable. A bool. I'm just going to call, let's see, what will we call this? Con correct. Not a great name, but I'm going to set it to false. All right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, hey, if this happened, I want it to stay false, but if otherwise, I want to say this. So I want to come in here and say con, what do we just call it? Con correct equals true. I probably put one, no, that's correct. So what I'm saying is, I've set it equal to false here. I only want to set it to true if the connection worked. You see what I'm saying? So now it should only be opening this connection in this case. Now there might be more that I still have to do. And even though it's a little overkill, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say con correct equal false. All right. And I've given you that message and I'm just going to say application dot exit like that. I'm just going to stop the program. There really is no sense going on if I screwed up. All right. Now I think what is it? Is it dot exit with this? All right. So now when I run it, I still get my error, but it's stopped. See that? And if I run it again, if I fix that and I run it, everything's hunky-dory. Now, that's not the only way to do that. All right? Yes?
Why do we make that Boolean variable?
Why did I make it? Because I wanted to be able to check it and basically come in here. I guess the way that I'm writing it right now, I probably wouldn't have even needed it. All right? But I can come in here and I can say, hey, one thing I could say is I could come in here and say, if con correct, all right, then tell it to open like that. Like I said, there's a multiple number of ways of doing the same thing. That's all I'm trying to get across to you. All right. So it is 9 o'clock. Let's take a break. Let's come back, please, at 9:15, and we're going to go over the second two parts of chapter 18. All right.